Hello, I'm Brian, and I'm here with the GE Healthcare BMET of the Year Award recipient, Richard. Richard, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, so I'm Richard Chamberlain. I actually go by Lee. I had to get them to change it on my name badge. I work at CommonSpirit Health. I've been working in biomed for about 13 years now, or 12 years, somewhere around in there. And I'm based out of Erlanger, Kentucky.
Perfect. It's funny. Some of the BMET of the Year Award recipients we've had in the past, they've been in the profession for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. So you're pretty early on, respectively towards that. I'm curious, how did you get into the profession and were you expecting to be here today?
No, I wasn't expecting to be here today at all. It was a huge surprise. Like I said in a previous interview, when I first started in biomed or HTM, and now that we're calling it that, I went to school for electronics engineering, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my career. I wasn't really even thinking about clinical engineering or HTM, but I applied at a local hospital. I went online and Googled what I could do with electronics engineering because I was in a small town. There wasn't much I could do.
Okay.
So I was trying to see what I could do. I didn't want to. I'm very family oriented, so I didn't want to move far from my family at the time. So I found biomedical engineering was the first thing I found. Right. So, one of the things, and I ended up applying, got the job. Didn't know how I was gonna like it. It was a trial run, but basically fell in love with it immediately. Just being able to repair things and have a purpose for a job. A meaningful position. So
that's something I hear a lot from many different BMETs. You talk about you have a meaningful impact in what you do every day. I guess everybody's end mission is patient safety. You're really ensuring that. I wanted to ask you, has the profession changed at all over the years, as you got to become more familiar with it and things of that nature? What has changed?
Well, it seems like one thing that I'm starting to see just a little bit more is, like I said, when I first started, I had no idea what biomedical engineering was. I just saw that the technical attributes that you had to have, that I met those. So I went into it blind. But I'm starting to see a growth. There's starting to become more awareness of the field, and I think that that's probably where we need to put a lot of our attention. Is the fact that I know in the workforce, I think over 50% of the HTM workforce is about to, they're over 50 years old and about to retire, and so there's going to be a huge opening there for the upcoming generation, and I think that, I don't know, just I've seen it grow. I know that there's a more emphasis on it, as far as there's more expectations put on the HTM field as to keep the equipment up and running, especially with aging equipment. A lot of hospitals can't buy new equipment every year, so you got to have somebody that can maintain those things. And it's, I just see that there's a lot that, as far as changes, there's just more emphasis on the field. There's more need for it.
Yeah, absolutely. We see the growth in this field. It's not like there's going to be fewer medical devices in hospitals, between interconnectivity of devices and the variation, the variety of different devices that ultimately are used in hospitals.
Yeah, that's another change too. Yeah, as far as IoT and the integration of artificial intelligence, that's something that people are going to we're going to have to embrace, because it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah. Take note. It's going to be something that a lot of HTM departments need to adapt to. And I did want to touch on, you mentioned a little earlier, HTM, clinical engineering, biomed, all these different words. What is specifically your title at CommonSpirit?
I am titled a field service specialist is what I'm titled. I work nationally. So, on my LinkedIn, of course, it says National Field Service, but technically I'm a field service specialist is what I am.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to transition over to, we're talking about the changing field and how you got into it. What do you think makes a good BMET, right? You're the BMET of the year. So how'd you get there?
Honestly, I think it's just hard work and caring about what you do. I know that, there's a lot of technicians out there that I've run into in the past that will, it's a job, and they come in, they clock in, they do their job, and then they leave, and I don't know. I try not to, but I tend to take stuff, I like to do the best at whatever I can do, or whatever I'm working on. And I take that to heart, so my work, unfortunately, doesn't stop whenever I clock out. There's a lot of times I'll wake up at, 4 o'clock in the morning, and then immediately something will go through my head that's been a machine that I've been working on that I can't find the answer for, or I can't find the problem, and then it dawns on me 4 o'clock in the morning, after I run through it for 45 minutes, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's what it is right there. So I have to, the next day I go in and that's how I repair it, So I think it's more of a tenacity. I think just, really sticking to it, not letting a problem get you down, just really pushing through it and using your technical backgrounds, start with the smallest thing first and then move into the biggest,
I'm glad you mentioned that, this staying up on skill sets, that's a nice transition into training. When you were introduced to us as the BMET of the year, it was mentioned to us that you had a big hand to play in getting CommonSpirit, their remote training program, especially, earlier on, but then I can imagine that this was incredibly valuable during COVID to make sure your different technicians stayed up to date on the various technical skills and know-how that they need. Mm-hmm. So I wanted you to tell me a little bit about that. Were there any challenges? What was the necessity behind this? What drove it?
COVID.
Figured as much. But
No. So when we first started out, we were training at our facility in Erlanger. Mm-hmm. We had a training room and everything. And then when COVID hit, we tried to pivot, and say, okay, well, we're gonna socially distance and we're gonna set the desks so far apart and everything. Well, then we had, you had a lot of regulations put in, about the mask and the travel and everything. Of course, we got to follow those, being a healthcare organization. So with that happening, it basically put a stop to all training in Erlanger. So then I started thinking, well, how can we there's value in this training. So how can we make it happen anyways, without it being, 10, 15 technicians coming to me. What if I go to them, So that was one thing. And then I said, well, I've still got to train them up on the didactic portion, of the training. So I thought, well, maybe instead of having to stay for a week to train them, if I can get it down to 1 or 2 days, that would be a lot better. And
this is the hands-on training part.
This is the hands-on training part. So that's where the hybrid training portion was kind of born, because then I was like, well, we could do a lot of it, 50% of the training or 70% of the training virtually. Yeah. So I created a virtual training, and I started having people sign up, and then we started doing training virtually, and then I would have to, of course, get approval to go out. But instead of having the risk of having 15, 20 technicians come to me, I could just go out one by one, spend 2 or 3 days and train them on the hands-on portion. Because one of the limitations of training virtually, with the hybrid training is the fact, if it was just strictly virtual, you wouldn't get the same amount of training.
Gotcha.
Because there's some things I just can't teach you. I can teach you, the logistics behind how the machine's supposed to work. I can teach you how, what the error codes mean, But when it goes to tightening a bolt, you know, if I said, hey, just snug it, I mean, your snug's different from my snug, right? So I can't teach you how that snug should feel. I can only do that in person, you know? So that's kind of how it was all born, you know, it just the necessity for the training, but that you have to have that hands-on portion. You can't do everything virtually, you know?
I hear you. Do you think that this is something that's going to carry on well beyond COVID?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't see the reason why not. Mainly because, you know, it saves so much. You know, if you think about the travel that it costs to fly 15 people in, you know, 15, 20 people into a destination to train, it seems like a lot more cost-effective option to do 75% of the training virtually and then, you know, have them come out for 2 days instead of one, or instead of a whole week or whatever, you
Absolutely.
know? So yeah, I think it's something that's going to carry on. I didn't know that when I started doing it, you know, I was just trying to make it work with what I had. But
Right.
now that I think about it, you know, looking at in reflection, I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to carry on.
All right. That's the future of training. I should note, Richard, you are the GE Healthcare BMET of the Year. Thank you so much for dropping by. I think this was a good chat. Was there anything that I haven't asked you that you wanted to talk about before we hop off here?
Well, yeah, actually, I think that in order for training like this to work, I think that there's a couple things. One thing that I see where it's going to improve is I know that there's some booths out here that are going to be displaying some of this stuff, but I really want to see VR being put into some of the training.
Interesting.
I've actually explored that a little bit. I just haven't really got into it yet, but that's something I'm going to try to start adding into my virtual training. The other thing is I think that there should be more partnership from the vendors with the HTM field. As far as you know, I know they make money off of training, but I think that, you know, we're all in this together. It's all about patient safety, right? So I think that there should be more of a certified training. You know, I think that vendors should work with the HTM field to allow them to have a certified trainer to train in-house. You know, I think that would help quite a bit.
All right. So you're making a call, a little bit more conversation between vendors and HTM departments or the HDOs. Once again, I'm with Lee Chamberlain, the BMET of the Year. And hey, this has been a really great talk. I do appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.